Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I stand here again today to share my views on the resolution to approve the value-added tax on tourism sector goods and services. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that my colleague Senator Gibeon and newly appointed Senator St. Clair and I will speak continuously in a language that is not confusing, where the people of St. Lucia will understand and see that ultimately our goal is to ensure that they come first. So, Madam President, on the matter of the bill laid before us, forgive me if I do not fully understand how we are going to benefit from this tax reduction. And the leader of government business did say that we're saying things on one side and another on the other side. But just right now, we are seeing that in the same breath, the leadership of this government is saying one thing where it speaks about economic relief for people of St. Lucia, and at the same time, offering incentives that are inconsistent with the needs of the people in these trying times. Madam President, we are, as I have mentioned, in a time where people are scared to travel. Major markets have closed off their borders. We have no cruise ship in ports, and our tourism arrivals are down by over 90% compared to this time last year. It just does not make sense that the government is looking to lower the VAT rate to 7% only for accommodation services and leaves the rate at 10% for non-accommodation services, such as the restaurants, the water sports, the land, air, and sea tours. Madam President, all of these operators have been affected by COVID-19. So why does this reduction in a tax not apply to every player, to every stakeholder? It seems to me, again, Madam President, that the all-inclusive industry players are really the major beneficiaries of this tax deduction because they already include water sports and tour packages. Madam President, aside from the hotels, everyone else still pays the 10%. So I am confused as to whose interests are at the forefront of the business of this country when our affairs are being managed. How did we arrive at the 7% anyway? And importantly, why isn't there an overall reduction to 7% across the tourism sector? Madam President, when you look at it, this just does not benefit the small operators who are equally affected. And still no elimination of VAT as was promised by the government, but 7% decrease for the all-inclusive sector while small operators continue to pay 10% and 12.5% for the ordinary St. Lucian. Have we for once given any thought to how these people will live when NIC can no longer sustain those relief payments and the country is broke? I didn't say it. When tourism is not recovering as quickly as the Minister of Tourism says it is, because the experts are telling us differently. We see relief for everyone else right now, Madam President, and then we'll be told that we have no more money. So what is the intention? How are we going to benefit from this tax reduction? What is the benefit to us to offer those incentives right now? Over 15,000 hospitality workers suffered as a result of the effects of COVID-19 on this country. Farmers cannot produce as much as they did. Small operators, business owners, they have all had to shut down their businesses because they just cannot thrive. And supermarket prices have gone up. Thousands are still unemployed and cannot maintain a proper standard of living. Do you understand, Madam President? Is it understood the level of poverty that this country is facing right now? The numbers that continue to climb higher and higher? And your business, your priority is not to provide direct relief to those persons, but to provide relief to just the accommodation sector, some of which were able to purchase ads on CNN during the US election. You are telling me that they are so badly in need of this relief right now, when our very own people in St. Lucia, the ordinary man, cannot enjoy those benefits? Madam President, I am certainly not saying that we should not provide incentives. What I am saying is at a critical time when some have no idea where their next dollar will come from, all we are seeing is incentives being provided to the same companies over and over and over again. Madam President, I recently had a conversation with a mother in the Odsa community who shared her story and the circumstances that she is now living in. A household of 5 persons. She once worked in the hospitality sector, leaving her family in the day to work that graveyard shift, sacrificing everything to provide for her family, going above and beyond to make the experience of the guest most memorable. She is one now who comes to Castries to beg for food to feed her family. Food, Madam President. She is still the one who will not benefit from this tax reduction. Madam President, it is just not her. It is thousands and thousands of St. Lucians with similar stories. Our people are without. We have never seen such destitution in some of our communities. And the Prime Minister will attempt to make a distinction between the UWP and the SLP, that his government is one of ambition and foresight. We want to engage in partisan politics in a time when the lives of the most vulnerable are affected. But Madam President, I just want to say, and persons have come before me and have said it, that there is one clear distinction without a shadow of doubt in my mind when it comes to this administration and the SLP administration, and that distinction is one word: priority. We want to talk about foresight. We can be reminded of a time when the then administration had the foresight for universal education, the foresight to create digital competence among our children by providing laptops in the laptop program that the government removed, saying that people cannot eat laptops. Is that the foresight that you speak of? As you can see, Madam President, on this side of the House, no matter what has been said, we will continue to advocate and put the people first, because we are
Senator
about
Francis.
the people.
Madam President, I really do not want to interrupt the
Senator, one moment,
Senator
please. Senator, please.
in her deliberation. On a point of order, Madam Speaker, I would like the member
What is the point of order, Senator?
that she keeps to the substance
What's
of
the point of
act.
order, Senator?
The point of order is that the contents of her speeches, that she keep it to the subject matter under consideration.
What's the number,
The-
please?
It's 37-1.
Thank you.
The idea of laptops and things, I do not know how laptop comes in tourism level. Link what?
Senator Jawahir, please be reminded that you're to speak to the issue at hand today within this particular resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. But all of this is really to help us understand what the priority should be. So, Madam President, this tax reduction, as I said, really benefits the all-inclusive sector, because what they can do now is market their products with room, food and beverage, tours and excursions, and lower their rates, already limiting the need for a guest to venture to other service sectors that are not all-inclusive, giving the small man, as usual, the shorter end of the stick. We are all very familiar with how the all-inclusive industry works and how it has become very difficult for Airbnbs to do business. Do you know that Airbnbs more and more are coming into the market and can account for approximately 2,000 rooms that are locally operated? Then you have to ask yourself, all this all-inclusive money, contrary to the indigenous ownership of the smaller properties, does the revenue garnered from it really stay in this country? But Madam President, that might be for a whole other debate. We look right now, Madam President, at the correlation between the value-added tax that the businesses will pay and the tourism levy that the guests will pay. And the argument is made that one will offset the other when it comes to smaller operators. But Madam President, this brings me back to one of my first points, that we have no money, but we're lowering and offering lower tax incentives. How is the country going to benefit? That is really the question. Our debt is rising. We're seeing more and more borrowing with each sitting. We are not focusing on the revenue that we can possibly generate from an alternative that I would like to recommend, which will be fair across the board and ensures that the government makes more while still being able to offer those incentives to not just one player, but all players. Madam President, you see, we will now have to introduce the levy to fund the tourism authority. But what are we collecting that will assist in reducing our national debt? A flat tax isn't really benefiting the country when we have an opportunity to make more. Introduce a tax as a percentage, not just a fixed figure. Because let's just say, if you are selling a room at US $1,000 a night, you will pay a flat rate of US $6. That's how much the government will be collecting. If your room is 200 US, you still pay that $6 to the government. However, if there is a percentage tax, for example, let's use the same 6%, the country makes US $12 on the US 200 per night, double what you would have made on just the flat US $6. And in the case of the US 1,000 room nights, the country makes US $60, which is 10 times more than just the flat rate of US $6. So, Madam President, when I think about it, it is not beneficial to just have one flat rate. And I make this suggestion to the government to make more fiscally sustainable decisions that will not restrict us from the opportunity to gain revenue and be reminded that it is our country, our people, and our economic stability and sustainability that should come first and not the other way around.